Well, good morning, everybody. Let's call the executive committee meeting to order. Clerk, please take the roll.
Members, if you can please make the selections on your tablets. Chair, we have a quorum with 4 members present and 3 members absent.
Thank you. Let's move to non-agenda public comment. This provides 2 minutes for anybody who would like to comment on something that is not on today's agenda, but is within the purview of the committee. Clerk, do we have any non-agenda public comment?
We do. We have 2 comments. David Roger, if you can please make your way to the podium.
Morning. My name's Dave Roger. I'm a native San Diegan, only been here 70 years. And I'm here to apologize to Ms. Cooney, always asking for new leadership. Actually, I think we need to get new leadership in this committee, because if you keep doing what you've always done, nothing's changing. The C Street has actually been designated as the drug crime, the whole 9 yards. We're talking 16 blocks. And MTS is responsible for a majority of that. When that trolley does not run, those drugs and those crimes are not there. So MTS's answer to solving this problem is that you take security guards and you have them come and show up and push it onto the sidewalk. You know, like a bar, if you cause the problem, you need to fix the problem. And, you know, I really think this executive committee needs to actually do something about this. You know, I mean, you've got officials here that are from cities that have proven that they don't know how to operate, as like the city of San Diego, $350 million in the hole. And that's who's leading this. Maybe what we need to do is get some change in here and quit doing what we've always done and make the problems be fixed. You know, I'm really upset and you know, seeing the city destroying itself. You go to the Balboa trolley station. What is it, 6 years old? There's 6 boards that give you when the trolleys are there. 1 is working, and it's only been that way for a year. So, you know, nothing's changing. MTS's system is falling apart, and you guys ought to all try and go use it daily like I do. Thank you.
Yolanda France, if you can please make your way to the podium.
Morning, committee members and everyone else. I came today regarding a matter that has to do with TransDev. However, earlier in the week, I went to Council Members Whitburn's office, and just today as I arrived, I learned that I am going to receive assistance with that matter, so I thank you very much. Councilperson Whitburn. Now, but on my way over here, I thought to myself, well, this is a good occasion for me to mention something that I've been thinking about for a while. And that is, I started taking, by choice, public transportation in 2001. And I have not regretted my decision one iota. Take buses and most often the trolley. But it has occurred to me that perhaps, I know it might be difficult to implement, it might never happen, but possibly there could be a business class car that would run 3 or 4 times in the morning during rush hour, 3 or 4 times in the evening. And I do think there would be people who would be willing to pay perhaps $200 or more per month. And there would be a special access card and possibly a security transit officer on each one of the rides, should someone without access board. There could be amenities, such as, I know that at one time in the subway in New York, there were lectures given on topics of interest to the commuters on the car. And of course, it would offer networking opportunities as well. I have found the demographics of riding public transit absolute
Your time has expired, ma'am. That concludes public comments, Chair.
Thank you, Clerk. Let's move to approval of the minutes of the November 13th, 2025 meeting of the Executive Committee. Clerk, do we have any public comment on the minutes?
We have no public comments, Chair.
Right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? We have a motion from Vice Chair Goebel, and we have a second from Director Dillard. Any discussion on approval of the minutes? Seeing none, Clerk, please call the vote.
Members, if you can please make your selections on the tablet. The motion passes with 4 members voting yes and 3 members absent.
Thank you, Clerk. All right, that brings us to our discussion items. Item 4 is the San Diego Transit Corporation pension investment status. I believe Mike Thompson is going to kick off our presentation. Feel free to begin whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Mike Thompson. I'm the Deputy CFO here. Today, we're going to talk about 2 items related to the San Diego Transit Employees Pension Plan. This is just for our San Diego Transit employees. We do have other pension plans through CalPERS for administration and trolley rail, but this is just related to the San Diego Transit Plan that we self-administer and self-fund. So today, we're going to start with the investment results in the investment portfolio of the plan. I'm joined by Eric Williams to my right and Jeremy Miller to his right. They are from RBK and they are our investment managers.
Thank you very much, Mike. Good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Eric Williams. This is Jeremy Miller. We're with RBK, and this morning we're going to run you through the performance and manager review for the pension plan.
Great, thanks, Eric. Good morning, everyone. I'll start on slide 2. We'll talk a little bit about investment structure. At the top, you'll see a snapshot of the investment portfolio. On the left, you'll see the various asset classes that the portfolio is invested in, as well as the dollar and percentages of those investments, and to the right, the target. The goal or objective of this portfolio is to maximize asset returns, but also while assuming a prudent level of risk that's appropriate for the liability profile of the plan. And you have a somewhat unique liability structure in that this is a fairly mature plan. It's been closed since 2011, so for some time now, and so continues to mature over time. And so as you'll see with the numbers about midway down the slide, we have continued to reduce the risk profile of the assets to align with the maturing nature of the liability. So from 16 to 10, volatility risk has been reduced fairly significantly over time. And so the asset structure now has been designed to be a little bit more conservative and liquid to facilitate payments and to be a little more capital preservation oriented as the plan matures. On the next slide, we get into some investment details. So here we break out the various asset classes in this figure. To the left by the various products, so you'll see 9 different diversified product strategies that we think provide diversification to the portfolio to help reduce overall portfolio risk. And in particular, we've tried to control allocations within your active managers to help reduce concentration risk. And you'll note one particular change that you might notice relative to the past is we have increased the allocation to fixed income, reduce some of the alternatives. That alternative allocation is no longer, again, risk reduction, but also lowers fees and also takes advantage of opportunities in the market from higher yields, higher incomes that are available within bonds. On the next slide, we look at portfolio performance. Stocks did particularly well. Both US and international saw a robust performance led by economic growth, also monetary easing, and in particular within the technology sector associated with AI. But bonds also had some strong returns as well. Yields came in as interest rates come down, bond prices go up. And so we saw some fairly strong returns within bonds as well. So you'll see you started the year with 193, had an investment gain of 19 million to end the year at 208 with a return of 10.2%. So the fiscal year return for 2025 at 10% was well over the actuarial assumed rate of return of 6%. So strong performance, and that we think may continue going forward with those, again, higher yields within that bond portfolio, continuing to provide a tailwind for your asset allocation. On the next slide, we get into the long-term return, provided a little bit more detail. And what you'll note is from year to year, you will see fluctuations in the portfolio above and below that actual rate of return. But over the long run, most of short and long run periods, you have outperformed that 6% actuarial return hurdle. And we think that will continue going forward. Of fiscal year 2026 update, since obviously we're already well into that year. We're halfway through. You can see the number is 4.6, so a strong start. Most of the way there already to your actuarial hurdle of 6%.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Thank you very much, Jeremy. So yes, thank you so much. In summary, we just want to reiterate that the plan is well diversified across both products and asset classes. The asset allocation is, again, more conservative by nature due to the fact that the plan is closed, mature. But we do feel that it's very well positioned going forward. So with that, that would conclude our remarks and open it up for any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We have no public comments, Chair.
All right, we will open this up to committee member discussion on this item. This is an informational item, so no motion is necessary. I do have one question. If you could go back to the previous slide. I was just curious, the fixed income performance over 5 years is a minus, it looks like minus 0.6%. Why would fixed income have a negative performance?
So in 2022, we had significant amount of inflation. So as interest rates go up with inflation, bond prices go down. And so there was a very significant, some estimated a 1 in 300 year event. It was very big change because you had starting low yields and then you had interest rates go up. And so that actually created a negative return in bonds that we hadn't seen for many, many years. Now with the higher interest rates, so it created near-term pain, but it provided a long-term opportunity. And so that's where you'll see 5.4%. And so that's why we've started to move more into bonds, is the opportunity is greater now with those higher yields going forward. So it hurt short run, but long run, it actually helped the portfolio.
Understood. Thank you for explaining that. Any other questions on this one? Good. I think we're done with this item. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
That'll take us to item number 5, which is the San Diego Transit Corporation Employee Retirement Plans Actuarial Valuation. We'll invite, I believe, Mike Thompson again to introduce the presentation and get started whenever you're ready.
Great. For this one, I am joined by Ann Harper up to my right and Alice Ellsberg to her right. Every year we bring the actual valuation results to the board, and the actual valuation results set the contribution that we make the next fiscal year. So this would be FY27's contribution to the pension plan by MTS. As we discussed in the fall, we are proposing changes to how we amortize the unfunded actuarial liability, or UAL. So Ann and Alice are going to present both the results of the current plan, and then if we change that amortization plan, what that would look like as well. So there's sort of 2 parts to this presentation. With that, I'll turn it to you guys.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having us. So I'm Alice Ellsberg. This is Ann Harper with Chiron, your actuaries for the San Diego Transit plans. I will go ahead and cover the actuarial valuation results from the 2025 valuation and go through the contribution for funding for the following fiscal year. And then Anne will take us through the projections and have a look at that amortization policy that Mike mentioned for any potential changes to that funding plan. So today's topics, first we'll go through a background to understand high level what the actuarial valuation does and what the contributions look like to the system. Then we'll take a look at a reconciliation of the contributions from the prior fiscal year to the current fiscal year. Have a look at plan history, see where the contributions have been, the funded ratio, et cetera, and then move into the projections, what the future outlook looks like of the plan, and then dive into that amortization policy, which is a big component in the contributions that go into fund the system. So starting with pension plan management, this graphic shows how the pension plan functions visually. The tank here, so the size of the tank are the liabilities of the system. So the value of the benefits that have been promised to all of your participants is the size of the tank. And the liquid in the tank is the assets. So the assets, how much money is there to pay those benefits that have been promised? And when the tank is not full, when the assets do not reach the top of the tank, there's an unfunded actuarial liability. And that unfunded amount needs to be funded over time in order to pay those promised benefits. So how do assets enter the system? Assets enter the system through strong investment returns, which RVK covered. And then also money comes into the plan from contributions, and those contributions come in from the employer, from MTS, and from the member contributions. And of course, out of the plan is the objective of a pension fund to pay those benefits that are promised to the system. And needless to say, there are operating expenses for administrating this pension fund. So let's focus on the contributions here. The contributions are set by the plan's funding policy, and that funding policy has three components to the contributions. So there's the normal cost, which is an actual term for the value of the benefits that are earned on an annual basis for the active members. There's the UAL payment, or that unfunded actuarial liability payment, which is determined through the amortization policy. And Anne's going to go into detail on that amortization policy because that's the biggest ticket in the contribution on an annual basis, is to pay off that unfunded liability. And that amortization policy has some details that adjust that payment. And then the expected administrative expenses. So the sum of these three components make up the total contribution to the plan, less the employer contribution brings us to MTS's contribution for the year. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So in the current fiscal year, so currently based on the prior valuation, the contribution was calculated at 21.2 million. Take us to the bottom of the chart. The fiscal year contribution for next year sits at 21.8 million. And the components of change go through the experience of the plan. So what happened to the assets, what happened to the liabilities, and any other changes. So on an actuarial asset basis, as RVK told us, so through June 30, 2025, on a market value, the plan returned 10%. So that's a nice, strong return above the expected return of 6%. But as we perform these actuarial calculations, we don't recognize that full amount of the market value on an annual basis because the market value fluctuates drastically. And so we provide a smoothed value of assets called the actuarial value of assets. And the actuarial value of assets recognizes a portion of every year's return over 5 years. So in the past 5 years, 2022 had a poor return. That poor return is pulling down the actuarial value of assets. So actually on an actuarial basis, the plan returned 5.8%. So that's a slight loss compared to the 6% expected. So on a market value, there was the gain, 172,000, but counting those deferred losses from prior years was 207,000. So the plan reported a $35,000 increase to the contribution for next year due to the asset smoothing. In terms of actuarial liability experience, the plan contribution increased by 628,000. That 628,000 is based on what happened to the benefits for the members in that year, the liability. And there were salary increases above the expected. So average salaries increased approximately 7%, but the salary was expected to increase closer to 3.5%. So anything in excess means those benefits grow faster than expected. So there's a payment that comes with that in the upcoming fiscal year contribution. Followed by the next line at 169,000 reduction to the contribution. There are fewer benefits being earned by the active membership because the plan is closed, so that active member population is declining year over year. So the normal cost piece of the contribution is getting slightly smaller year over year, so it pulls down the annual contribution, and then some miscellaneous factors for the total change of 624,000 for the year. Taking a look at the history of the contributions, these bars, the top of the bar represents the total contribution for the year over the past 10 years. Each of the colored layers shows pieces of the contribution increased year over year, and it was due to strengthening the actuarial assumptions, specifically bringing down that discount rate assumption or the investment rate of return assumption. So at the beginning of this period, the assumed rate of return was at 7.5%. Now that rate of return assumption is at 6%. And that adds to the annual contribution, because when the discount rate or that investment return goes down, the size of the liabilities goes up. So more funding needs to go into the plan. And the plan is positioned conservatively because it's a largely closed plan with that lower discount rate. So we see the 2025 valuation reported 21.9 million for the contribution based on the current assumptions and current policies. Moving into the liability and the assets and the plan's funded ratio. So the top of these bars, the total sum of the bars shows the liability of the plan. And if we look at 2025, the total value of benefits earned to date are about 350 million. The gold bars show the assets. The assets in the fund are close to 200 million. So that means that there's a 150 million gap in that unfunded actuarial liability. So the plan sits at 58.6% funded. So there are 58 cents to the dollar available in assets to pay those promised benefits. This is what it looks like historically, but based on the plan's current funded policy, and we'll get into the projections, that we see that this funding ratio is ramping up into the projected in the future. And over the last 10 years, the population has shifted from more actives, the gold slice. We had 34% of the population was due to active members, but given that the plan is largely closed, there's a shift in the demographics, in the status of these members. And now we see that only 18% of the population in this group is active, with 71% retirees. So the two top pie charts show the change in the head count, and the two bottom pie charts show the change in the plan's liabilities over the last 10 years. And we see that those have largely remained similar in that there's a big move where the liabilities are sitting with the retiree population as the plan continues to mature and those actives decrease. And with that, I'll turn it over to Anne to continue with the projections.
Good morning. And before I move on, are there any questions so far as to what Alice has already presented for the, okay, great. Okay, so Alice covered basically where we are today, historically where we've been. The next two slides, I'm going to look at the projections of the plan under the current amortization policy. So the current funded ratio is 59%, and you can see the numbers at the top of those bars is the calculation of the funded ratio. And you can see that we are looking at progress over the next, every single year until the plan is expected to be fully funded in 2037 with that valuation. To back up, those bars are the liabilities and the line is the assets. So anything above that line is that unfunded accrued liability. It's very important to note that the liabilities are projected to decrease as the population of your membership decreases because it is a closed plan for the most part. So it's a declining population, and these liabilities will be the same regardless of what our amortization policy is. I just want to note that these will not change. The liabilities are not changing. Your unfunded is not changing. Moving on to the projection of the contribution rates, you can see that the bars are the projected contributions and the line is last year's projected contributions. So in the short term, in the next 2 years, you can see that the contributions are a little bit higher than last year, and that's mainly due to that liability loss because of the salary increases being higher than expected. But then as we start to recognize the favorable asset performance for the last 2 years, you can see that the contributions are starting to decline. And then thereafter, there's gradual decline in the contributions due to fewer active members being in the system, and those active members are earning benefits. So they're earning less and less benefits, and so that's shows up in the normal cost declining and that contribution declining. So under the current funding policy, the last UAL payment is expected to be made in fiscal year in 2039. And then the contribution would drop significantly to 1.2 million. And that is just the remaining actives in the plan at that point, accruing benefits and your administrative expenses. Okay, so now we are here not just to present those valuation results, but to talk about amortization policies and a potential change to your amortization policy. So what is an amortization policy and what is its purpose? Well, the principal purpose of an amortization policy is to have enough assets in the plan now and in the future so that you can pay for those member benefits and their beneficiary benefits when they become due. And we've laid out here the principal elements of an actuarial funding policy. We are only going to be focusing on that amortization policy. So an amortization policy, there's many aspects of it. First and foremost, this policy determines how you're paying that unfunded accrued liability off over time. Similar to if you have a mortgage payment. Are you going to have a 15-year mortgage? You're going to have a 20-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. So that's kind of an analogy I like to use because most people have mortgages and they can understand that. So an amortization policy should also be structured such that you're not having any negative amortization. And what that means is that you're making enough of a payment on that unfunded so that your unfunded doesn't grow, that you're paying more than just the interest on that unfunded, you're paying principal down on that unfunded. And for example, if you had a 30-year amortization of your house and you're paying, let's say, 7% interest, you will be paying only interest on your mortgage in those first maybe 5 or 10 years, right? So you're not even paying enough to pay off any of that principal. So pension plan policies and actuaries have gone through a lot of policy making and white papers and different white papers so that unfunded accrued liabilities should not, these policies should basically avoid this negative amortization. Next is your amortization payment going to be a level dollar amount like a mortgage, or are you going to structure it such that it's a level percent of your payroll? Well, for your plan, since it's a closed plan, your payroll is shrinking. It doesn't make any sense to have a policy where you're paying it off as a level percent of payroll. So your policy is a level dollar, just like a mortgage. Then there could be layered bases or single bases. Most pension plans now have layered bases. You don't have just one single UAL that you're paying off every year. When we do evaluation, there's an actual gain or loss, and we create a new layer for that. And so the period of that payment for those new layers can be different than your original payment. And finally, when we're looking at an amortization policy and setting that policy, there is a balance between stability and affordability and actually sufficiently funding your pension plan. So you need to weigh the pros and cons between having a longer amortization period versus a shorter amortization period where you'd pay it off more quickly. So at the request of MTS, we performed a study back in September of 2025, detailing 4 reasonable alternatives to the current policy. And the four different policies are laid out here. And what's on the table today for consideration is number 2, where the entire UAL as of 2025 would be re-amortized over a 20-year closed period. And just for comparison, we wanted to lay out what the current policy is compared to what this alternative policy on the table is. They're similar in many ways. They're both layered bases, level dollar amount, as we discussed. Back in 2012, the UAL was reset into one base over a 25-year period. What's on the table today is resetting the outstanding balance of the 2024 valuation as of 2025 into one base. So very similar, except we're suggesting amortizing that over a shorter period, over 20 years, not the 25-year period. And then any subsequent changes in the UAL going forward would be amortized over a 10-year period. And those subsequent changes would be things such as actuarial gains and losses from assets or liabilities, not the experience not being as expected, or things like assumption changes in the future. We do experience studies where we look at the assumptions. So any changes in the assumptions would also be amortized over a 10-year period. So here we're looking at the projected contributions. Under the current policy, it's the blue line, and that's what we went over earlier, where the contributions sit around $20 million in the next few years. And then the gold bars are the projected contributions under the alternative amortization policy. And you can see for last year, the valuation was 21.2. For this current valuation, the projected contributions would come down to 16.5 million compared to the 21.9. So that's a savings of about $5.5 million under the new policy. What's really important, as I talked about earlier, is that this policy should have no negative amortization. That blue line, the teal line that you see across those gold bars, that line is called the tread water line. So if contributions were at that level, you would be treading water. You wouldn't be paying off any of the unfunded principal, but you wouldn't be increasing your unfunded either. So any contributions made above that line, you're paying off principal on your unfunded accrued liability. And you can see over time that you're paying off more and more principal every year as you get closer to the end of that 20-year period where we're refinancing your unfunded over. So as of 2046, that is what the last UAL payment would be made. And then your expected contributions would go down to $1 million. These lines here, we're now looking at the projections under the current policy and the alternative policy of the funded ratio. We're sitting at about 59% as 2025. The top line is the baseline, and you can see that there's progress in the funding ratio, and it's expected to reach 2030. In 2037, it's expected to reach full funding. The alternative policy, it's important to note that each and every year we are still projected to make funding progress with the alternative policy. It's just a little bit slower because the time frame of when we're paying off that unfunded has been extended to 20 years. So they both are reaching a goal of 100% funded. The new policy, you would reach that in about 2045. So both reaching the same goal, just a little bit slower under the new alternative policy. Are there any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
We have no public comments, Chair.
Okay, we will open committee discussion on this item, and we'll begin with Director Dillard.
Good morning, and thank you for the presentation. I actually had like a question on page 6, maybe for Allison.
Yes.
I was looking at this and I was wondering, did I hear that the people that are still contributing to this fund, the employees that are still contributing, what's the average contribution now? Because I thought I heard you say that it was lower than normal, or you didn't use the word normal, but you said lower.
That the normal cost portion is decreasing because there's less actives. So in aggregate, when we look at the contribution that's going into the system, a smaller portion is that normal cost because there are less actives contributing, but every individual continues to make the member contribution at the predetermined rate. So I know that the ATU, the IBW, and the non-represented, they have slightly different contribution rates. Their rates around 8% is the member rates. So the members are continuing to pay 8%.
Okay, so they're still active. There's just much less of them, and that's why.
Yes, that's it. So in aggregate, that number is going down, but on a percentage basis, it continues to hold at 8%. And MTS is putting in more than 8% with the normal cost portion and the UAL portion.
And just so I could help clarify for the record, the normal cost is like a term of art for a specific category of costs. It doesn't mean that there are then abnormal costs. So maybe you all could just define what the normal cost means for the record.
So actuarially speaking, so I'll say it actuarially and then take it out of actuarial language. We use the term normal cost to say, what are you earning this year? That's your cost of the benefit that's associated cost for this year's benefit. And the next active and the next active and next active, that's called normal cost on an actual basis. With removing the term normal cost, it's what's the value of the benefit that you earn for the year. And if for another year of service, how much more are you getting? And another year of service, how much are you getting? So all of that added together for every single active participant in the plan for the year, what is the cost that they just earned in that year?
Okay, thank you. And then I just have one more question. I think it was, I can't remember the number, but I think it's, so whatever number that was. That, okay, for 2046. So at the end, there's pretty much no one else left to retire, right? Is that what that means, that
Right.
2046? Okay.
Right,
So then from there.
There's very few though. There's just a few trickling actives left at that point.
Right. But what you're saying as far as the no negative amortization, you're saying that we're not going to be upside down at all, and that we're in a safe place. But would it be recommended to pay off the rest before that 2046? Is there any recommendation for a payoff for sooner?
So like we are here today to discuss this alternative amortization policy. The board at any time has discretion to change this funding policy. So if, let's say in 10 years, you decide, well, we want to pay this off sooner, you certainly can do that. It's your discretion to determine what those amortization periods are and what that looks like if you want to pay that off sooner or not.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, it helps. I guess we would just have to determine if we paid it off, how much money we were gonna save. Like if we did it 10 years sooner, you know, that kind of
Right.
thing, and whether
Right.
we could afford to pay it off
Right.
sooner. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Dillard. Let's go to Vice Chair Goebel.
Thank you, Chair. Great presentation, very helpful to people who aren't speaking this every day. Let's go to slide 2. Never in my life did I think that a plumbing diagram would help me understand investment, all the pieces. So that was very clever. That is brilliant in terms of helping everybody understand.
To give credit where credit is due, this is from the 1965 Harvard Business Review Journal, and the plumbing has not changed.
So, good to know plumbing hasn't changed. Let's go to slide number 14, please. While we're getting there, one of the things I think I like the executive committee to be seen as is help guide discussion for the full board. So how many employees, what percentage of employees are we talking about for this plan versus the total group of employees in the company, agency?
Yeah, do you want to? Well, I think there are
So there-
about 300 active members to date.
Yeah, in the actual review, there's
Yep.
268 as of July 1, 2025 that are active in this plan. And we have about 1,600 employees total in MTS as a whole. And then in this plan, there's 1,000 people that are receiving benefits and another 169 that have earned benefits, haven't started receiving it yet.
So I think when we talk about it next week, it might be helpful to say what we're talking about here affects 30% of the employees or something like that. It helps put it in perspective.
Okay.
That we're not talking about the whole agency here. We're talking about this percentage of people in the agency.
But I think it's important to note as well that this pension, we are required to provide the pension. It is a earned benefit that we would have to pay irregardless of what is intended in the plan, correct? By law,
Absolutely.
that's the last out.
Correct. This just determines how we pay it. We're obligated to pay whatever benefits are earned and paid out over the course of the pension plan. This just determines how much we pay every year. That's
Absolutely.
basically all it does.
Understood.
So the decisions on the amortization more impacts the budgeting for our annual operating per year, not anything for the employees or the people who earn the benefit.
Absolutely. I'm just, as this topic, I'm trying to say this topic covers 30%. We still have another plan with different rules that might have different things.
Right.
So I kind of like to know how much are we talking about here? Let's go to slide 14. We're there, right? Okay. So the blue bar is our current amortization
Policy, yes.
policy
The
and
dark
payments.
blue, yeah,
But the bars would go up to that blue line under our current
right,
policy.
right.
So currently we're paying somewhere between 20 million or so by 2039 when we would be fully funded.
Correct.
I think if I understand what you're saying is, let's go to slide 15. The current amortization policy saying hey, in 2039, we would be fully funded at 100. Use the payments. We stretch out how long we need to pay that off. That's the green line. Either way, we still end up at the same endpoint. It's just for budgeting purposes, for cash flow purposes. We cut our payments from 20 million down to 13 million a year, but it lasts a little bit longer till we get to unfunded. I don't know how you can encapsulate that into words, but I think that would be a helpful summary to provide the board as well.
Okay. Definitely. And I think, again, I'm going to reiterate that all the policies that we looked at are all actuarially sound. You are continuing to pay off chunks of your unfunded accrued liability, and not just a little piece. Like you are, even in this next year, you'd be paying close to $3 million of that off. So and there are pension plans across the country who don't even make the actuarially determined contribution that they're told to be made. And even some of these actuarially determined contributions, you're only paying like 1% of that is like of the principal down on your unfunded. So in terms of nationwide, and California stands out as public system, retirement systems who pay for their pension plans and their liabilities.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm understanding the reason why you're recommending this is so that we can reduce some of our payments over the next 15 years for cash flow purposes to help the fiscal cliff situation.
Right.
And we stretch it out a little bit longer in exchange without compromising the final end date for both.
There is one other point that I have not mentioned yet, though, about changing the current policy, is that the unfunded actual liability under the current policy is set to be paid off in 12 years. So every base that gets set up at this point is over that shrinking period, 12, the next year would be 11, the next year would be 10. When you get closer and closer to that date, if you have large losses in any year, you're going to see the contributions spike. And so this policy is also to help smooth out future contribution volatility.
Of course.
And I did not mention that as a strong point, but that is another reason to address the current policy.
Understood. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Also, I mean, economic and budget were isn't reducing payment from the probably on from increased risk to the plan, or is it really just a matter of later so that we could preserve service levels?
That's
now?
exactly what it is. There's no other downside except for the fact that when you extend payments over a longer period, when you add up all those payments, they are more than a shorter amortization policy would result in. But that's, I mean, you can, there's always a trade-off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, we know we have a budget challenge now, so this makes sense to me. This is an action item to adopt the staff recommendation. I'll be happy to make that motion to do so. And we have a second from Vice Chair Goebel. Is there any further discussion on the item in front of us? Seeing none, well, thank you for the presentation, and clerk, please take the vote.
Members, if you can please make the selections on your tablets. The motion passes with 4 members voting yes and 3 members absent.
Thank you, clerk. Item 6 is an informational update on the Orange Line Improvement Project. I think Heather Fury is going to come up and kick off this presentation. Feel free to settle in and begin your presentation whenever you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Heather Fury, the Director of Capital Projects, and I'm joined by David Holman of TY Lin to give you an update on the Orange Line Improvement Project. I'll turn it over to David.
Good morning, everyone. Hello, my name is David Holman. I'm with TY Lin, and I'm the project manager for the PMC team. So today we'll be giving you a general update on the Orange Line project by discussing kind of a project summary and reviewing the overall project schedule. We will also give you some updates on activities for phases 1 and 2. We will briefly review the funding We will discuss some other work that's occurring along the orange line. We will highlight some of the agency coordination, give you an update on the risk management, and discuss next steps. So the Orange Line project includes 17 miles of improvements along the Orange Line, beginning at 32nd Street and Commercial and continuing through the El Cajon Station. You can see the project is broken down into 2 phases. Phase 1 is illustrated here with the yellow highlight, again, starting at 32nd Street and Commercial and running through Massachusetts Avenue. And then phase 2 begins here at Massachusetts Avenue and runs through the El Cajon Station, shown with the red or orange highlight. For the overall project schedule, both phases are shown here, with phase 1 on the top. You can see we are well into the phase 1 construction, which started last summer. It's continuing through the end of this year with closeout coming in 2027. Phase 2, the design is complete, and we're currently working on some pre-construction services, which include the phase 2 procurement of the construction contract, with the phase 2 construction scheduled to start later this year and continue through 27 and closeout occurring in 2028. So I'm going to give you some updates on the phase 1 activities. This slide represents the progress of the phase 1 construction by months. And continuing into the construction update, we have reached construction day 270. There were additional 9 days of rain delay that occurred in December and January will be added to the end of the contract. Construction is advancing at a rate of approximately 27% complete, and the build to date of 6.9 million or 26% of the overall budget. We're also tracking 2 amendments, which include various items of a total of $257,000 or less than 1% of the overall contract. The contractor is continuing to work on submittals, and they have received over 86% of the owner furnished materials for phase 1. Continuing into the phase 1 construction, it is broken down into 4 segments. You can see here with the different color shaded areas. With the segment 1 beginning at 32nd Street and Commercial, and currently they're working on preparing for the first cutover and testing of this phase. Phase 2 is advancing into the signaling installation work. Segment 3 is advancing to the civil and duct bank underground work, and segment 4, the work will begin there in March. So we have some construction photos for this first phase. These photos represent some of the installation of joint installations for the track at 32nd Street. We also have a switch conversion being installed here during absolute work window number 3.